Welcome to the Agents of Innovation podcast, where we feature conversations with entrepreneurs, philanthropists, and artists. Welcome back to the Agents of Innovation podcast. I'm your host, Francisco Gonzalez, and I just want to say thank you for listening and watching this program. Of course, we have an amazing guest today, Jeral Poskey. Jeral is the CEO of Swyft Cities, and he's going to tell us all about the future of the transformation of cities, including how to get around all that crazy traffic. Jeral, welcome to the Agents of Innovation podcast.
Hi, Francisco. Thanks for having me, and it's great to be in Miami virtually. Just painful that it's only virtually.
Where are you today, Jeral?
Mountain View, California, the heart of Silicon Valley, the heart of innovation and transportation these days.
Well, Jeral, that's a good place to start because I know you've spent a lot of time out there. I know you were educated Stanford, both undergrad and business school, and also you spent 15 years at Google. Can you tell us a little bit more about your background there at Silicon Valley?
Correct. Actually, the undergrad was University of Texas, which is a relevant part of the story. But I was at Stanford for business school long before people were thinking that it was a backwater back then, and it wasn't the cutting edge of transportation. But my dream was to change transportation and improve cities around the world. In a series of steps, I ended up at Google, and I was the project executive for transportation planning in the real estate division. And there we had access to all the cutting edge technology. Waymo, Kitty Hawk flying cars were just down the street. And I thought that maybe some of my dreams of how we're going to change cities were going to go away. But actually, as we ran the numbers, we said, these cars are just going to make it worse. Traffic only gets worse with this. So I rushed you through a lot of steps. But yes, definitely being here. Very interesting me in Silicon Valley. I think I've seen 7 different companies' autonomous vehicles this week. And we're only on Wednesday for those who don't know. And it's just the change is coming, and it's going to catch us by surprise. And I don't think everybody's ready for it yet.
No, we're not. So it's interesting because you highlighted something there really quickly. You came from a small town in Texas before you went to the University of Texas. And so it's interesting because in a small town in Texas, how many traffic lights that you might have in that town?
Oh, we had a lot. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5.
5 traffic lights. Wow. Is that how many they have today?
No, there's definitely some more today, but people still complained about traffic because there was an interstate that ran through the town. And so it'd be a bottleneck, and it might be 3 light cycles to get through. And if you're used to an uninterrupted flow, like all of a sudden traffic is building up on these constricted points. And that's a lesson for Miami, like there ever was one. Constriction, very restricted traffic and flows, and it just builds up.
Well, it's funny. I travel a lot, and I notice that everywhere I go, there's always traffic and construction, no matter where you go, small town, big city. It's all relative to where you're at, right? I remember when I first was actually moving to Tallahassee back in 2008. I lived there for 8 years, and I remember hearing people complain about traffic in Tallahassee, and I was laughing because I had lived in the Washington, D.C. area for a few years. I lived in the Philadelphia metro area for a few years. And of course, I come from South Florida. And I was like, are these people crazy? There's no traffic here. And then, of course, what do you know? I remember after living there for a few years, one day I'm stuck at a light at 5:30, and God, where does this traffic come from? And I thought, I just became one of those local Tallahassee people complaining about traffic. So everything's a little bit relative. But, Jeral, I come to you today because I discovered Swyft Cities through the beauty of X. Some of the posts I saw months ago, and talked to you and your team, and I said, what is this? These look like a way that you're trying to help us get out of traffic, but not with necessarily what you think of like the Waymo, Uber, autonomous vehicle type stuff. How are you looking at solving the problem of getting us out of traffic?
Yes, when we looked at this, our team at Google was about solving a traffic problem we had around our corporate campuses. And so we had the full remit to look at anything we wanted, from underground, flying, didn't matter. And it was turning out that Underground is expensive no matter how you do it, no matter how much you cut the cost of the tunnels. You still have stations, you still have all of those things. So underground was not an option. Flying vehicles just don't have the capacity. You dream that they're going to land in your driveway. They really don't. They have very limited places that they can actually land a substantial number of these. So they're not going to solve the problem. The autonomous vehicles are going to make even more traffic on the street, and we were stuck. And you only have to be sitting in traffic. It may have even happened to you, and you're sitting there, you're frustrated, and you look and you see that power line or a telephone line that's running along the road, and you think, man, if I could just be up there, why can't my car just attach to that? And I will just be over all this traffic. That's basically what we've done. We contracted with a company, three, but one won the contest and developed the first switchable cable car, overhead cable system. And so what it does is it can be above traffic, but at first glance, you might think, oh, I've seen those at ski resorts, but this is actually totally different. They look similar, but
like a gondola.
This is now, like a gondola at a ski resort. That's a cable that moves back and forth all day. The vehicle's really dumb. It just grabs on and it goes back and forth all day between two destinations. Here, there's no set path. The cables aren't moving, so the vehicles are autonomous. They drive themselves along the cable, and instead of being stuck on one path, every time they reach a post, they can turn and switch and connect to other cables. The beauty of that, is that now each one can take a unique path. And so rather than running them like a bus or a train where you have to know a schedule, they're like a taxi or an Uber. You get in, you tell it where you're going. And typically these are like bus stops at street level. You've dropped them down to street level. Cars are going by overhead. Then when you get in yours, you merge up with that main line. It takes you wherever you needed to go, to any stop you selected. And every trip is nonstop. You're over the traffic. There's no stoplights, no stop signs, no congestion until when you get to your destination, you've skipped all the stations along the way because they're down at ground level. When you get to your destination, you drop down and you're off. It sounds like science fiction. I think even the fun part was taking it from this concept, from sketches to prototype 1 to prototype 2 to full-scale prototype is underway right now, and bringing it into reality. It's been a great journey.
Okay, so you talked about a lot of things there. Some things might come to people's mind, including me. And I think I mentioned this to your team when I talked to you a month or so ago. I actually, when I was in college, I worked at Walt Disney World in Orlando. I worked at Magic Kingdom, and actually, the main ride that I worked on for a year and a half was the Skyway ride, and that actually ride sadly doesn't exist anymore. I worked on it in the late '90s, and not too long after they discontinued it. But one of the things I wanted to tell you, first of all, there was a transportation concept that Walt Disney created to get people from either Fantasyland to Tomorrowland or Tomorrowland to Fantasyland. It was a one-way trip. Believe me, I had to tell a lot of disappointed guests that it was a one-way trip because I had to get out on one end and they thought it was a round trip. But the whole point of it being a one-way trip was actually for transportation, right? But actually, the other cool thing about this, when you go back to Disney's story, before Walt Disneyland or Walt Disney World was even a place, Walt Disney himself debuted 4 rides at, I believe it was the New York World's Fair in like the 50s or something. And one of them was like the Cinderella Carousel. One was It's a Small World. Anyway, one of them was the Skyway. And if you remember as well, currently at the Magic Kingdom, there's an area called Tomorrowland. Mm-hmm. And then, of course, Walt Disney created a whole separate park in Orlando called Epcot Center, all about the future and tomorrow. So he really was thinking of these things in terms of what he thought the future city should look like. So we've been around for 75, 80 years since he created that, and we don't have these. But then I saw your visuals on the Swyft Cities website, and I was like, this kind of looks a little bit like a gondola, except there are some differences that you pointed out. I remember the technology of the gondolas at Disney, where the cable is the thing that moved, not the car. Actually, people don't realize, but the little gondola comes into the station, and actually we had to physically stop it or push it because it came off the cable. But then once we pushed it on the cable, it's the cable that's moving. But you're saying the cable is actually not moving. It's the car that's moving, the gondola, we call it the vehicle that's moving. So that's an interesting concept. The other thing is they're not flying like the Jetsons, right? They're not off like right. They're actually on a cable. But the other thing is I'm thinking as well, if you're in Miami One of the cool things we have at the downtown Brickell corridor here is the Metro Movers, which are taxpayer funded. They are free to use. And they're great. And they come like every 5 minutes, and they seem to be autonomous in some ways. There's nobody driving them.
Correct.
The stops are like every, I don't know, less than probably quarter mile from each other, on average. You could technically walk pretty fast between the stops, but if you want to go 6, 7, 10 stops, that's really the time to use it. So it's great. And it's, like I said, it's free to use, but you are on with a bunch of other people. Some of them don't smell so well in the summer as well. And sometimes I might be that guy too, just point of interest. But the other thing is you're also stopping at every station, so it's taking a little while to get around. Obviously we have buses and we have this Miami trolley, all these things. But what's cool about yours is you're saying you don't necessarily have to stop at all the stations. You get in your own little vehicle, like it's your own little car, but you're not in traffic. You're above traffic. So I think that's a really unique concept. How does how do you determine in a city like Miami, or maybe you have a sample that you can tell us about on where the stations are, how far it can go, how they can be built out in a city? What does that infrastructure look like?
Yes. So one of the nice things about doing it this way is it is fully modular. So it is, imagine it like Legos. You've got straight through pieces of posting cable, you've got turns, you have intersections, and you have your station stops at the ground level. You can arrange them in any way, and you can grow them and expand them. You can even take some out and rearrange the network over time. So there's no single one answer. It's not as you said before, before it was a one-way trip for everybody. And that's what you see at the ski resorts. It's a one-way trip. As a Lego set, you start it small. You build 3, 4, 5 stations in some corner of the city where it makes sense. And then you add on at any time. And, if you were building a bus line or a train line, you're stuck in a straight line. And here we can go horizontally and in all directions. But also, if you started adding more stops, it kind of messes things up because it slows people down, or you have to figure out now there's the blue line and the red line and the green line. This doesn't have that. As far as you, the rider, are concerned, those new stops, you don't stop at them. You're skipping those all along the way. New stops, a new expanded network gives you more choices of where to go, more other people get on. And what we were seeing is it's just what's called network effects, or increasing returns to scale. As the network goes to 5 stations, that gives 20 combinations of places that people can go. You double that to 10 stations, you have 90 choices of places that you can go to and from. And so as the network gets bigger, even a little bit bigger, it gets way more valuable. So what we're seeing is this trend toward people saying, start small, let's find a place that it makes sense. And then as it proves itself, let's grow. And it seems each case is different and unique as to where that small start is. But I'd say even the most skeptical people realize, boy, once you get this going, there's almost no end to the places. Now, I would be clear to say, we're not going down the residential streets. We're not going over your backyard. We can actually take out about 85% of the streets, I would say, are a no-go. But we did this for the city of Dallas. And of that 15% of streets that are remaining that are compatible with what we're doing, that drives 70% of the economic activity in the city. And then if you add in, people can walk a quarter mile or so to get there. You can do a lot of a huge impact just with that 15% where this makes sense.
Okay, so let's also talk about, I love by the way, I love the analogy to Legos. That's, you can kind of build this thing wherever you want. Maybe Lego can come in and actually be a supporter of you, because they could really make a great branding out of this. But anyway, but I was thinking, what about the cost, right? And how does, what are the kind of the cost in putting this into a city, and how would it maybe compare to some of the other modes of transportation cost?
Yes, let me set, numbers are big in transportation. So let me give you a few ways to set the scale. New York subway is running $2 billion a mile. People movers at airports, $1 to $2 billion. Light rail, depending on where you are in the US and whether you have all the right of way you need, easily 100, 200, $300 million a mile. A parking garage, a small parking garage, probably $45 million. The largest parking garage I've ever built, $386 million. So now you're in the scale of massive numbers. This is $20 million a mile. And so when you're in transportation, you also, a lot of people really focus on the building cost, the cost to build the thing, but then you have to operate it. So anything that needs drivers, whether it's buses or trains, that becomes the majority of your operating cost. And this is autonomous. So you have a dedicated crew in the control room, you have a maintenance crew, but other than that, you can run as many vehicles as you want, and you have an almost fixed low operating cost. So I think it's important that this was designed, by the private sector for the private sector, where the cost value trade-offs, we're not going to move 20,000 people an hour like a subway can, because that's not the need that we see. We see it's these suburban areas where you need to move more than a bus, and maybe you don't need as much as a train, or a train's just not going to fit, but anything matters. And so $20 million a mile, an order of magnitude cheaper than most rail options, 2 orders of magnitude lower than subway, cheaper than a parking garage, and yet the operating costs are the most reasonable out there.
Okay, we're also, let's just say, obviously in Florida, one of the issues we have with building a subway or anything underground is we hit water really fast, right? So I'm sure there's some technology that can get us around there, but it's very, very difficult. And so we don't really do that. But the other thing we have is we have very violent afternoon thunderstorms in the summer, and occasionally hurricanes and maybe a tornado or two. So tell us how this holds up in hostile weather like that.
Certainly. And if you look at our website, you'll see one that is a single cable, and you're probably thinking, wow, that's going to sway a lot. In an area like that, it's a dual cable design that would make sense. So you really cut the swaying a lot. You still get all the switching capabilities. In high winds, there is a limit where we're going to say, you do shut it down as you would, close the streets, especially a hurricane, being that this is coming. You know how to prepare. And then after it passes, we hope to be able to be the first transportation system back in operation. We're above what's happened on the ground. The cables are short spans. They're easy to fix, easy to repair, and then try to get the city back up and running as quickly as possible.
Well, that's good. So tell us, for a city, like you were also talking to me, I could kind of see this. How, if I'm coming at this, there's all these new buildings going up here, downtown Miami, Brickell, constantly. The skyline is changing every year, and it's going to continue to change. How would this be incorporated into maybe complementing some real estate projects?
Oh, that's where, yes. Now you're hitting one of my favorite parts, where we really think about what's the right way to do it. We're not just responding to what's there today, but the future responds to it. But as an aside, this reminds me that I think as you see the construction happening in South Florida, and we talk about how bad traffic is today, trust me, in 3 years, you're going to look back and say, boy, I wish we had 2026 traffic again. Because you're going to look back and think this was when it was good. Because all of that brings new people, it brings new vehicles, whether that's people driving their own cars or not. So then when you look at the real estate side, the largest expense in any of our line item buildings, if you have structured parking, is the parking. It's either the largest amount of space on your property or it's the largest single expense. And so any building is looking to minimize the amount of parking it builds. And I think you've got some really low ratios, but still people have to move around. So if they don't have parking, they're calling an Uber, they're calling a taxi, it's more traffic on the street. But for the developer, it's a dollars and cents decision to say, wow, if I added $2 million for a stop in my building, this could be, people may not even have to go down the street. Let's just put this on the face of the building. You're using your building access card to access the vehicles. Strangers aren't coming in, but yet you've got this thing that it's basically becomes an elevator that goes horizontally. There's no good word in English for a horizontal elevator, but it just becomes a part of movement that gets you from one spot to another, and you don't have to think about it. You just push a button and you go.
Yeah, I think you're very much right about we're going to look back on 2026 and remember how good the traffic was now. And the other thing we have in the downtown Brickell, Miami area here is we have these historic drawbridges that we have a lot of shipping that comes through there. It's not just the party boats and the yachts. That's definitely an element, but there's actually some shipyards in the inside passage here in the Miami River. And so you have these bridges that open for 10, 15 minutes with traffic just building up. And then they close, and 30 minutes later, they might open again, and you hear all the honking because I think people, 200 cars deep back in traffic don't realize nobody can go because the bridge is open. But it'd be not, the Metro mover goes over the bridge, right? So that's kind of an alternative. But you can't walk over the bridge while it's, you can't walk or drive or anything. So it's a real pain in the butt. But I'm thinking about every one of these new buildings going up and how much that's going to add to the traffic waiting for the bridges, right? But in general, every one of these new buildings is going to bring so much more downtown population, like you said, more cars, and people forget about the parking spaces that are needed in each of these buildings, and that could be real estate that somebody could be filling in another way, not just with cars. So anyway, I love to walk. It's one of the reasons I moved to the Brickell area, and but it would be nice to be able to go a little bit further with one of these. What do you call this? This is Swyft is the name of the company, but what do you call the technology?
Right. The technology is Whoosh. It is the
Whoosh.
So yes. User on-demand, destination selectable gondola vehicles. It's too hard to say. Whoosh is the product.
So the ideal here, and the ideal is basically that I could walk out on the street here. There's a little station, and what do you have, like a monthly pass or a daily pass, or how does it work? And then you get in your Whoosh, and you basically just say, I want to go to this address, and it just bypasses all the stations. It gets me to that address. I don't have to stop between a bunch of stations. I don't have to pick anybody else up. It's just me and whoever's in my vehicle when I'm getting in.
That's right. Yeah, it's like you're going to have an app that looks like an Uber app. Uber may just bring it into the app to say, this is my destination. Vehicle's waiting for you when you get to the station. You don't even have to wait. It's and then you're off. Like, again, nonstop trip. You and whoever you've chosen to be with. I will say, there's a feeling that people have instinctively that, boy, wouldn't it be better to do this on a bus or a train? And during rush hour it is. But then the other 22 hours of the day, those are having to run around empty. And so it ends up with a situation where they can't put as many buses on the streets as you wish, or as many trains can't run as frequently, because they then have to support this. What do you do during the downtimes of the day? And so by being fully autonomous, we're able to balance that and say, we're going to provide the vehicles you need during the rush hour, so you have these no-wait experiences. And they can be idle. There's not drivers who are sitting around idle all afternoon. The vehicles can be idle, but you're not wasting any other operational expense. So that's the balance. Keep the vehicles waiting for you, make it a wonderful nonstop trip, give you a beautiful view. I mean, I think that we hadn't talked about that, and that is becoming surprising to me how much that's a value proposition for not surprising maybe in the private sector, but even the cities that we are talking to really value the giving people a better experience in their commute, in their travels, partly just for the fact of saying people need to enjoy this. And then also data is coming in that shows, and more people will ride. It's not something that you dread riding. It's a public transit system that you look forward to because it's a great experience. And as you mentioned at Disney, some people don't want to ride it as a trip. They just want to ride it for fun. We'll have some of that as well, because ferries would probably be the only other public transit system that people can say, wow, I really enjoyed riding that. And some people might be riding it just for fun. It's that level of game changing in how people experience it, which in the private sector results in higher rates for more visitors for the theme park, or higher rates for the hotel that they're connected to. And even in the public sector, that adds value.
Well, I think it would be a big hit here in Miami because in addition to all the people that live and work here, we have a lot of tourists. And even the tourists that used to just go to Miami Beach, they're downtown, they're Brickell. And I notice all the time they get on the Metro mover, and it's like the first time they've ever been on like the Metro mover, and they're just so like, ooh, and they're taking videos. And I was probably like that the first time. I saw something like that. And so and actually, by the way, you know what we have around here too? And I don't know, maybe you guys, it's probably common in Silicon Valley, but I noticed tourists really get a kick because most people where they come from, they've never seen this, and that's the little autonomous delivery things, the little what you call them, the little
delivery
robots.
bots. Yeah.
Delivery bots, and they're just going down the street. And what I think is funny is they're going down the street at night too, like 8, 9 o'clock at night when it's dark, and they got little headlights on it. It kind of cracks me up, but anyway, so I think the city is ripe for this. But what I'm also thinking is if Miami could implement something like this, all the people from around the world that come here will see it, just like they see the robots, just like they see the Metro Mover, and they'll see this thing. They'll go, "Why can't I have this in my city?" So I think this could be a really great place to be like a bellwether, if you will, for other places to carry it forward. So that's great. So what is are there some projects you have underway in other places that you can tell us about? And what have you learned from this?
Yes, projects underway around the world, Japan, U.S., then over in the Middle East. Two of which I guess I can tell you a little bit about because they're public. Irvine, California, and Anaheim, California. Anaheim famous for Disney. It's
Disney.
Something aligned, but it also has a baseball stadium, a hockey stadium, entertainment arena, new development, a convention center, and lots of hotels. So very similar. I think I'll focus on that one. That one's early stage. That's a project that the city is looking at what technology is going to be appropriate. That's probably the closest analogy to what you have in South Florida. What we are seeing is actually, this isn't as much Anaheim, but I'll just put it out there that there's a lot of cities that realize the future is going to look more bleak than today, traffic-wise. They are not prepared. They were never really designed for mass transit. Maybe the older cities in the Northeast can imagine more buses, more trains solving the problem. And then you get to places in the South and Southwest, including the Southeast, and I'll talk to city council members, and they're just like, it's not going to work. It's not going to help. We can get 3%, actually 3% helps, 5% helps, but you're never really going to change the traffic with traditional modes. And they're very open-minded to say, what can we do? Because their back is against the wall and they just feel like they have no option. So people in that situation, very open-minded. And then people who have these specific district, we call them sort of district level, Anaheim being a good example. There's a district here with clear boundaries that has a problem, and you can solve it. You can draw a line, you can make a map. And we've been doing that with the city to say, how do you connect? What do you connect first? What do you connect second? Which paths do you take? How do you avoid the trees? How do you avoid the difficult crossing of the giant freeway? And we just work through that. And it's a pretty straightforward process, takes under a year. And I think that's the other thing that people see is it's one thing saying, great, here's a great idea for a new rail line that if we start now, we'll have it in 20 years versus something that's much more flexible. It takes about a year to plan, a year to permit, a year to construct. And within one election, if you're a public official, within one election cycle. And if you're in the private sector, it's within the planning and construction phase of your development. Does that person who is building that building who said, maybe I don't have to put as much parking in if I needed this. Well, it doesn't help them if this thing doesn't open until 4 years after they've built their building. So you have to be in sync with the construction tempo. And so that was one of our many design criteria was you got to be in sync. You got to be fast to build, and that's planning, permitting, construction, and moving to operations. And so the ability to say, I can solve a problem in your area by 2030 is a pretty powerful message to take to cities who are used to things taking 20 years.
That's great. Yeah. Now, what have been maybe some of the obstacles you have encountered, or maybe some of the resistance to people in places wanting to put this in?
I think number one is the knee-jerk reaction that we're going to be going over your backyard, and then we pretty much have to dispel that. And I like to give people a map and say, here's the red marker. You put an X on all the roads that you don't think we should go on. And it actually turns out they tend to be more permissive than I planned for. They're like, well, it'd be okay over here if you're going to solve my traffic problem. This street's fine. This street's fine. And so I think that's number one is the misconception around this. Number two, and people, this is, I think my favorite, is people question the capacity. Is this can it really move a lot of people? And I love that one because I don't think many other transit systems, people are worried about, gosh, we're going to have so many people wanting to ride it that can it handle the capacity? And so, A, they tend to be surprised when we give them numbers and work through the math in their particular location. But B, it's just a sign that even the skeptics are bought in to say, wow, you could be overloaded, because this is really going to be something that people enjoy riding, solves their need, actually gets them from the point A they want to be at to the point B where they really want to be at.
You know what's interesting too is the more I think about it, it's a lot more flexible, right? Like when you're trying to catch a bus or a train or the Metro Mover or whatever, there's a specific time that you have to catch it at. If you miss it, you're going to wait 10 minutes, 30 minutes, an hour, however long these things come. But it seems like the only thing you're really waiting for here, maybe you're waiting at the station in line or something, right? Like for the next vehicle. But I mean, it seems like it's got the adaptability to move people at a lot faster pace.
Correct. And if you've been to Tokyo or a place where the trains are just super frequent, and you just see that people have a different attitude. They're not rushing because they know if they miss this one, there's another train in 2 minutes. It just changes your whole outlook, because you're not balancing a schedule and, oh, what if it's delayed? Then, all these things. And so taking away the friction, we just call it frictionless transit. You don't have to think about anything. And using your app, you would then know, hey, maybe there is a delay today. Maybe it is going to be 6 minutes. I'll stay in my apartment an extra 4 minutes before I take the 2-minute walk down the street. I don't have to get there and then find out the vehicles are late or something. We have that technology, and you would know that. And it just, frictionless travel is about the best way to put it.
Yeah, I think that's great. Well, that's what everybody's dream is, frictionless travel, especially no one wants to sit in traffic. It's such a waste of time. And also it's stressful. It can be dangerous with so many people coming on at once. And obviously it's not good for the environment, right? Continuing to have good traffic. So I don't know if that's something else you want to talk about in terms of like environmental impact, like in terms of how that can, be helpful to reducing the environmental impact.
And certainly you see all electric vehicles that are really lightweight are super efficient. I'm going to give you a few layers here. So just as the most efficient way of moving people on demand with lightweight electric vehicles that have very low friction because they're running along, low friction wheels on a metal cable. It's just about one of the most efficient ways to move people outside of bikes or maybe a train during rush hour. But then when you factor in all those empty rides in the afternoon, it ends up being better than bus or train in the US. So it really is an efficient way to move people. Then sort of the next tier, and real estate matters a lot. South Florida is actually pretty good on the notion of how it builds. We kind of know, I think most people get the feeling that suburban sprawl, really inefficient use of resources. The homes are harder to heat and cool, mostly cool in Florida. It leads to more driving. It leads to big yards. So Florida is doing pretty good on the net effect of the way it builds. But with autonomous vehicles coming, the tendency to sprawl, the tendency to spread things out. And that tends to mean more driving to restaurants, more driving to, just so making sure that we have this great area where, not for everybody, but for the people who want to live in a tight, compact district where all of their travel is like an elevator. You just push a button and go. This is the kind of thing that makes that type of living effective. And so when you make a smaller, lighter weight vehicle, more efficient way of moving, more efficient way of living, all in all, this reaches almost a gigaton of carbon reduction out of the environment per year as we build it out. It's pretty amazing environmental effect on all the layers.
That's great. All right. So the next thing I wanted to ask you about is what is the support that's needed to get this thing going? What kind of investments you might be looking for? What kind of stakeholders need to be involved to make this happen?
Yes, I would say what we're seeing is the customers do, whether it's public or private sector, they do like to see a full package. So we've been working with engineering firms and construction firms here on the West Coast, project finance firms that focus here on the West Coast. And that seems to be, if you get those three, engineering, construction, and finance in place, the door's open. Now people understand, okay, I see how you get from the technology you have into implementation. Our Irvine project in Irvine, California, those are independent. I'm trying to remember what's been published and what's still under staff review, but independent cost estimates on the engineering, independent reviews of the technology by an engineering firm and the writership. So you need those third-party firms out there to validate. That is all in place in the West Coast. And I then say then you need a bit of a budget for planning, design, but the business development side. So I would love to repeat that in Florida. We've got this model that works. Engineering firms that know South Florida, construction firms that know South Florida, finance firms. And feels like I'm playing into Miami strengths. Like these are things, especially the finance, the world of finance is really changing in this era of private credit, which is a whole nother topic we can get into. And I'm guessing a lot of that is centered in Florida, where a lot of finance, but a lot of new ideas are born. So bringing together those three components, if there's a local champion that would say, let's set up the Swyft Miami, Swyft South Florida. I'd love to connect and kind of brainstorm how we can work together to make that tight level of partnerships out there that can really bring these things to fruition. One of the partners that we've kind of hinted at, and we working with that here too, are real estate partners, to people who say, I see the value this brings. I want to do it. And if going back 100 years or more, the streetcars were often built by private developers who said, man, I've got a few hundred acres out here. I need to get people to it. Not everybody had a car back then. It's worth it for me to build a train just to get people out to 300 acres of fresh property. Those kind of economics still exist today. There's a whole digression we could do on Brightline and Fortress and the investments around stations and how the train business works versus the real estate business. I don't know enough to really just dive deep here, but that is a whole topic that Florida is really, again, on the cutting edge of understanding.
Yeah, I'm actually reading a book right now about Henry Flagler. It talks about Henry Flagler, but I mean, here he was a guy who sort of had a second act in life, and he was coming down here to Florida. First thing is he just didn't think the sort of properties that he could stay at were nice enough. So he said, let's build some nicer properties, right? He built first in St. Augustine, which is now what's on the campus of Flagler College, a beautiful hotel. I think it was the Royal Ponciana, if I get that right. Okay. And then he moved further south, and he built the Breakers and a lot of other places in between. But then he said, how are we going to get people there? And he built a railroad, right? And then he built a railroad all the way to Key West, and people thought that was impossible to go over a bunch of islands. And so think about it, he did that in the late 1800s, early 1900s, kind of a long time ago now, 125 years or so. And yet that was the actually beginning of what is the infrastructure of Florida today. Like that is where the infrastructure started. There were very few people living in Florida at that time. I was like less than like a million people, million and a half people, something like that, around the turn of the century. And so, we were one of the lowest population states. We were one of the poorest states, but this infrastructure got us started. And it didn't hurt that right around the corner was the air conditioner, right? So that was helpful. But anyway, that was kind of the early vision. But I think that's what we're going to need. We're going to need a Henry Flagler-like vision to change traffic, because everybody just goes for the same kind of things that we've been doing. More lanes, more express lanes, Uber, rideshare, like you said, autonomous vehicles, electric vehicles, trains. These are all options that are on the table and need to be on the table for people. But I think you're presenting something to me that almost looks fantasy, but you're bringing it to reality I love the whole like Lego building block kind of set. You could do this very affordable. You can test it. So you're not like when you put an infrastructure of like Brightline's spending a lot of money. This is why they're having some financial problems, right? So they're spending a lot of money laying down new track, putting in beautiful stations, beautiful real estate around those stations. But that's a very huge investment. This seems like smaller piecemeal investments and you get to work around where you think the tracks, for lack of a better term, the cables should go.
Right. Yeah, there's another fact that we haven't talked about yet, and it's everybody in transportation, and Flagler had a good reason for this, but really likes to build big mega projects. You go into the transportation or civil engineering because you want to build big things, and if you're at the bar at a Silicon Valley conference, people are bragging about they made something faster, lighter, cheaper. You go to the bar at the end of a civil engineering conference or a public transportation conference, and people false brag, but oh man, my last project was 5 years late and $100 million over budget. Oh, mine was 10 years late and $1 billion over budget. And they want things that are big and grandiose. And what everybody is missing, the flying cars want to bring you 30 miles from the suburb into the downtown. The Hyperloop wants to take you 100 miles. That's like a trivial amount. Those long distance commutes are 3% of all travel. 78% of all trips are under 10 miles. And nobody focuses on them because their technology of choice doesn't work for these short distance trips. But that is 78% of all of our trips. You're probably seeing that most of your time. I look at the fact, I think it was 93 hours a year that the average Miami person is wasting in traffic. And that's average. So some of you are wasting 120, 150, maybe more. Those aren't, because maybe, if that happened in Houston, I would say, wow, they're wasting an hour in traffic because they're going 30 miles from the distant suburbs. You're wasting an hour in traffic because you're trying to go 3 miles and it's just bogged down.
Just wait for that bridge to open,
Right. Yes, exactly. And then before you got to the front, it changed again. And so that's what we're seeing is like nobody has focused on the short distance trip that don't need $1 billion projects, that aren't things that take 20 years. And just it's a massive market that was greatly overlooked, I think, because nobody had the right technology to solve it. And so car was the only option, maybe a scooter. But now we have the solution that nobody else has. And it's just a great place to be from the business perspective. We have a business model we love. We have technology we love. I have a team we love. And I just can't wait to get started.
Yeah, I think that's great. And, one of the things, I'm the executive director of the Economic Club of Miami. So one of the goals we have for, being part of this community is to help make Miami, one of the great financial capitals of the world. And but we always pause when we say that, because every time, we're so thankful that all these billionaires want to keep moving to Miami and to Florida in general. But it's also raising the prices of real estate here for the average person. So the other side of what our mission is to help people also be able to continue to live the American dream, which, to me is mostly that we live in a society where people can achieve economic mobility, right? And we don't want to just be like another city that, it's just for the uber wealthy. And then where's the working class able to figure their place in time? But what happens in cities like this, right, is you get a lot of people that commute. They have to commute to be able to afford real estate, whether that's they're buying real estate or whether that's they're renting. And so, therefore, that adds to the traffic, right? So it would be interesting to see where this becomes also a solution that adds to the affordability for people. So whether it's less time in traffic, less time commuting, things like that, and they could actually bring more value back to their life and the time they have here to spend, and it's not just sitting in traffic. So I think this could really be proliferation for the entire region, because we are a super region now. Miami-Dade County is obviously have all these municipalities just within this one county, but then you look to Broward County, Fort Lauderdale, and all its suburbs, all the way up to West Palm Beach and all of its suburbs, Boca Raton. So it's a big super region, and it would be interesting to see if this kind of technology that Swyft is offering here could be something implemented across the region that could really help us all get to where we're going a lot faster.
Yes, I mean, I can hint. We're definitely talking to a couple of cities up and down that corridor, and you see the magic really coming in when you can imagine a network in City 1 and in City 2, and they're great within that city. But to the average person, city limits, like you just cross them, you don't even know when you're crossing them. So when they connect and when you can get anywhere in the network on demand, with the press of a button, that just changes. I think people really see it then like, oh, I could go anywhere here kind of instantly without traffic. That's that region and that pathway in particular. I think the constraints, the causeways, you have just so many constraints that drive up the cost of traditional solutions, make it really difficult for things to work. And our solution just fits so well in South Florida. So, and then back to your just economic equity is sort of, but it's not just equity for equity's sake. It says to run an effective city, to run an effective place, you need people at every level, not just at the top. And so I don't have the statistics for Miami specifically, but if you're at the lower end, your budget, a lot of it's going to transportation, a lot of it's going to your car, a lot of it's going to gas, which at the time we're speaking, we may also look back at 2026, May 2026, and say, boy, I wish I had the gas prices that we had. As much as we hate it right now, we might be looking back and saying, I wish I had those prices today. And so their world, if you're on that tight budget, a lot of it's about transportation, and you can pay with money or you can pay with time. And I remember one of the many points in my life when should have been evident to me sooner that transportation was my destiny. I was on a student bus, but there was this woman who was clearly not a student, and I started talking to her, and she was, why is she on this bus? And it was the only way to get to her job in South Austin, the University of Texas. And I started doing the math. She worked jobs at 2 hotels and taking multiple buses to get between her home, the first hotel in South Austin, the next hotel in North Austin, and then back to her home over on the east side. Like, it's 2.5 hours. She's working harder than any of us and wasting 2.5 hours on buses, and it's not that transit is the problem, but just that's the only option she had. And you pay with money or you pay with time. And so that's at the lower end. But actually, then the rest of us, unfortunately, have a situation where we can't even buy ourselves out of the traffic. Everybody's paying with time, even at that level.
Yeah, well, people are trying to buy themselves out of traffic. I know there's the little, I don't know, have you seen these these like little mini helicopter things? Yeah.
Yes.
So, and that's great, but that's for a very, very small group of people. And I hope it works for them. But that's not going to help the mass amount of people get out of traffic. But the other interesting thing you mentioned there, paying with money, paying with time, I think that's a real big deal, because I think the more time goes by for all of us, the more we realize how much time is valuable and why sit around wasting it in traffic. But the other thing you mentioned, if you're talking to any of these municipalities in South Florida, since there's so many of them, I think if like one or a few implement this, enough people within the broader region will see it. And if it can like work here, let's just pretend you're talking to Hollywood, Florida, which is kind of in the middle of Broward County. I could kind of see that, like, if something like that worked there and people see it, and people down in Miami or people up in Boca or Delray or West Palm see this, they go, this would be cool in our city. How can we make this thing connect? And I think then you got yourself a real tipping point in terms of a lot of places in this region implementing it.
Yeah, and I think you did ask in the beginning more specific examples. Maybe it's late for people who can't picture it, but I'll take St. Pete as an example, where you now have multiple train lines running up and down the corridor, but a bit away from where people want to be. That's probably a half mile or even less from downtown, but in a summer day, doesn't feel good. So maybe the beginning is just connecting the train station to 5 stops around the downtown just to get you more circulation. Hollywood, it may be train stations all the way to the beach. That just gets all that traffic that just fills the streets trying to get over to the beach traffic. And if you could get above the beach traffic, you save people an hour just in that little piece of their trip. You go all the way down to Miami Beach. That's an infamous place where everybody wants to be. You can only imagine the added value you bring when you can make it a place that you enjoy going to rather than you're stuck in traffic going to. And it could be a place
if I could pick a place that this thing could start out, It could be commuting people from downtown Miami to Miami Beach and back, and maybe even up and down the beach. And what's in between downtown Miami and Miami Beach is the port of Miami. We have the number one cruise port in the world. Millions of people go out. I don't know the exact numbers, but a lot of people go out of there every week. And there's this little gap. What does everybody do? Everybody pretty much takes an Uber from downtown Miami. They come and they stay in either a hotel in downtown or Miami Beach or maybe by the airport. Literally, I mean, this is like the demo. I hear this all the time. And then they pretty much take an Uber because they've dropped off their rental car if they got one somewhere. You can't take the rental car to the airport, or they drive. There's a parking lot at the cruise port. It's again real estate. You're taking up a lot of parking garage space, and so it depends where they're coming from. Maybe they came from another area of Florida and they're driving into the and then they're just paying for parking for the week that they're on the cruise, which is also happens at airports, right? Your car just sits there for a week, and $20 a day just accumulates. So, not to mention you mentioned the gas prices. So there's a lot of things where I think we could save a lot of cost for individuals and a lot of time. So it's not just time; it's also money. But yeah, I think that area, man, between Miami and Miami Beach, there's really no solution. They have a little ferry now between one. It's unless you live right here and right there, it's no point kind of taking it. You really have to go out of your way to catch that ferry. So it'd be nice if something could take me to that ferry if I really wanted to have a beautiful ferry ride across the bay. But I think there are some really great short distance solutions that this can happen right here in Miami. So I will when this podcast is done and it's out there, I will share this with everybody I know in this area, because I hope more people will consider this solution, and that the stakeholders that need to think about this really, maybe open the phone calls and start to talk to you, Jeral, because I think that would be a real winning solution.
And I think you had a good point too, that this could go a lot of places, but if you want a place where people are going to see. By the way, if you don't know, cable cars in general are very popular in Central and South America, mostly South America, and so just the number of people from around the world who pass through Miami, whether they're Europeans or South Americans or wherever, it would be a pretty stunning way to see the city, a stunning way to have transit that, for once, Europeans would say, we want this. And you just look at the opportunities there. It's hard to envision the future, even 5 years out, but for better and for worse, I mean, Florida is doing what it takes to welcome new people. You are building in all directions. You're doing, maybe you feel like it's not happening fast enough, for all the people, and the prices are still going up, but it's happening faster than probably anywhere in the country. And it's going to keep happening. And so what you see today is just the beginning, for better and for worse. And so we want to make sure that we mitigate the worst. And how do we turn the worst part of it into the best part? And that sounds like marketing, tripe or something. But literally, a lot of people, the worst part of the day is the commute, whether it's time or frustration. And how can we turn that into the best part of your day, when you just can take a nonstop ride, you can decompress, listen to your music, have a phone call, and when you open your eyes, you're looking out at some of the best views on the planet. I mean, there is no place I would rather be than Miami or anywhere up the South Florida coast, Orlando, Tampa, you name it. I think once you get started, as you said, once you build that first piece, there's no stopping it.
Yeah, and by the way, before I met you or even discovered you and this project a few years ago, you mentioned, you just refreshed my memory. I was in Medellín, Colombia, where they do have these cable cars. A little bit, different technology than you're having, but same concept. And they really do move people. And it actually transformed one part of Medellín, which used to be one of the most dangerous parts of the world, that in that city. And these people actually don't even have roads. They're in these mountain villages, and they're very poor. And they put in these basically gondola type things that go up and could get people up and down the mountain side very fast. And I mean, they're actually super fast, and they're constant, and they move people. And you could, now it's not the Swyft technology of getting you, from your A to B without any stops in between. There are stops in between, but I remember actually writing a little blog post afterwards, a little Facebook post or something, and I said I have seen the future, and it's in Medellín, Colombia, right? And I actually talked about. I mean, I just go back to this idea of Walt Disney's vision for the future of cities, and I mentioned that, like, wow, Walt Disney would love to see Medellín, Colombia in 2023 or whatever I was there. So I think this is like another level of that, and like you said, there's a number of people that go to Medellín, but it is not on the map like Miami's on the map. And I think we could, this would be a very beautiful place to take those rides and get people out of traffic. And, I think the other aspect of it is once people start getting out of traffic, guess what? The actual number of cars on the roads probably go down, and maybe we actually see less usage of the roads, so that if you actually do want to drive a car,
right,
it becomes like Miami Vice days again, and it looks like a beautiful, clear road on television in 1984. So.
And that's fine. Yes, there's a place for everything, and parcels always have their place. I will say, since you seem to be willing, I'm not sure your trip wasn't just to see the gondola system in Medellín, but you should come down to New Zealand this summer, the summer of 2026. You and any of your listeners, the Demonstration Center and Proving Ground will be having an open house, still setting the date, July, August timeframe. See the future, ride the future, kick the tires, meet the engineering team. Just a fantastic group of people down there building this. Our job here at Swyft Cities, I don't think we actually said, is to do the software and implementation. So the software that controls the vehicles, your app, from your app to your origin to destination, that's us, and the implementation skills along with those partners in engineering, construction, finance. That's what we do. But the hardware full-scale system is under construction right now in Christchurch, New Zealand at the airport. So you're able to fly right there, see the expansion plans across the airport, across the city, and then really, really imagine it, bringing it back home in your suitcase and we'll put it up in Miami.
Well, I've never been to New Zealand, and I can't be there in July or August, but I am planning to do a group trip there in January of 2027. So if you'll have me in January, I'll definitely, we'll stop in Christchurch and we'll see the project. That'll be part of our Fearless Journeys experience.
We will see you there. Yes, I don't know who all is in your crew, but I think you're going to have a great time in New Zealand. They are so hospitable. There are so many things to see, and they just have an adventurous, cutting-edge spirit that just makes every trip there fun. It's a great place to be.
Well, if anybody's listening to this or watching this on YouTube and you want to go to New Zealand, I'm also going to be going to Australia, by the way, because I have to go to the Australian Open. It'll be the final of the 4 Grand Slams that I'll be able to have seen in my life. So that'll be in January. But anyway, if anybody would like to come, just shoot me a message and you can reach me, fearlessjourneysllc@gmail.com. But Jeral, how can people reach you? How can they find you? Where can they visit to learn more about Swyft Cities?
Yes, it's swiftcities.com, and Swyft is with a Y, SWYFT. But I believe search engines will still find you. Yeah, you can figure it out one way or the other. We'll redirect you if you spell it wrong. And so Swyft Cities is the website. You can find our contact information there. Reach out. I think whether it's partnerships, investment, or just we have fans. We have fans around the world who are excited about this, who want to stay in touch. We have a newsletter that we can use to keep you informed of how things are going, the highlights of what's happening around the world. And boy, as things are taking off, the highlight reel is getting longer every month. It used to be hard to decide what to put in the newsletter. Now it's hard to figure out what to cut. So exciting times. Great. And I can't wait till we talk about Miami in one.
Yeah, that's fantastic. I can't wait either, believe me. But I can wait in traffic, and so that's what I'm doing. So, but anyway, Jeral, this has been great. I really appreciate, when we think about the name of this podcast, Agents of Innovation, you really are an agent of innovation. So I just want to thank you for being an agent of innovation and for being on the Agents of Innovation podcast. And thanks again for trying all you can do to get us out of traffic.
Doing my best, Francisco. Thank you so much for having me, and I look forward to being there real soon.
Great. See you soon.